Earlier today, we have had another terrorist attack, this time in Brussels, happening a few months after France. According to news reports, a series of explosions ripped through a Brussels airport and a train this morning, killing around 35 people and injuring more than 200 in the latest attacks to, of course, rock Europe. Now, these are preliminary. I'm sure, I hope not, but I'm sure the death toll or the injury count might increase since it is still very early. But so far, that's what we have in the death toll and injury toll. Now, what happened? Well, there were two explosions, two blasts. One of them was in the main hall of Zaventem Airport. And pardon me if I accidentally butcher the name of that airport. And that happened around 8 a.m. GMT. And there was at least one suicide bomber, probably one suicide bomber at that airport. Now, there was a third hit, and it was at a train in Maelbeek metro station, and that's in the heart of the city's EU quarter. Now, unfortunately, that happened during rush hour, so that's why you have so many injured, so many killed. Now, Pierre Mays, who was a spokesman for the Brussels Fire Brigade, told the AFP, Agence France Presse, that at least 14 people had been killed at the airport, while Brussels Mayor Ivan Yavan Mayor said around 20 died in the underground blast. More than 200 people have been wounded, and of course several critically wounded. Now, in response to that, of course, the entirety of Europe seems to be on lockdown. Definitely don't blame them. I think it's probably the right thing to do, is to make sure that you've passed that time of emergency, that state of emergency, before you start to open things up again. Now, there's, of course, the possibility that this could have been worse. In fact, an army team had later blew up a suspect package at the airport, with media reporting that police had also found an unexploded suicide vest in the area. So it could have been worse. It was terrible, but it always could have been a little bit worse. So that's why it was a good thing to shut everything down, get the police out there, and the army out there, armed forces, to try to secure the area, to make sure that there weren't any more explosives lying on the side of the road waiting to hit more innocent people. Now, these attacks, well, there's a reason these attacks happened. These come 4 days after Salah Abdeslam, who was the main fugitive in the Paris attacks, was seized in Brussels. So, according to the Washington Post, Abdeslam was the last known surviving participant of November's attacks in Paris that left over 130 people dead. Now, Abdeslam was a French citizen of Moroccan descent. Now, he was born in Brussels, so he's a Belgian national that lived in France, and that, of course, is very, very important, and later lived there in Maelbeek with his family, including his 31-year-old brother, Ibrahim, who obviously he killed himself during the Paris attacks. He did a suicide bombing attack, blew himself up. So, great. That's a hell of a role model you got there. Now, Maelbeek. Maelbeek is a pretty interesting area, and the Washington Post details why. Now, this is an area northwest of Brussels that's home to about 100,000 people. Now, this area, specific area in Belgium, is sort of a problem area. Well, let me explain. The area just across the canal, not far from some of Brussels' more fashionable areas, first began to fill up with Turkish and Moroccan immigrants around 50 years ago. But while the area has seen some levels of gentrification in the recent years, it remains a sharp contrast with more affluent areas of the city nearby. Okay, so you've got your poorer immigrant area sort of next to the affluent area. You want to guess where this is going? Unemployment in Maelbeek has been estimated at as much as 40%. That's really, really high. That's nearly half the population that can't find work, that can't find jobs, that you could say even are desperate. Now, what do desperate people turn to? Oftentimes, they turn to religion, and sometimes even more extreme religion. So that's not good. Now, the Washington Post continues. Often those from immigrant backgrounds find themselves at a competitive disadvantage on the job market as they speak only French and Arabic, when many jobs in the city require knowledge of French, Flemish, or Dutch, and sometimes English. Okay, well, that could be solved, of course, by teaching people how to speak the language. That would help. I'm just saying, that would help. Now, there's also a growing right-wing political movement in Belgium that has led to feelings of division in the country. Some Muslims say that a 2012 ban on Islamic veils, like burqas and niqabs, in public spaces is a sign of their community's alienation from the Catholic mainstream. Now, why is that important? Well, it makes sense that if you alienate certain people or a sect of people, that's going to create a little bit of tension. Now, that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that it's okay to look at that and go, oh yeah, well, you don't accept my hijab? I'm going to blow you up. No. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. I'm just saying is that stuff like that, banning cultural things, such as that, look, if you want to wear that, I don't give a fuck. If you're a nun, you want to wear the nun hat or whatever, I don't care. If you're a Jew, if you want to wear a little funny looking cap, I don't care. That shouldn't be a thing. I know some people out there say, well, that oppresses women. Well, look, that's up to the woman whether or not she chooses to wear that. I think telling her that she can't wear that is also a form of light oppression. Hey, I'm telling you that you can't wear something that you might want to wear, or that's customary in your culture to wear. Now, how about we let people wear whatever the fuck they want, as long as they're wearing, hey, look, as long as most people are wearing pants, I'm happy, okay? I don't care what you wear, as long as you're wearing something. If it's cultural, I don't care. And we shouldn't care. I'm just saying, right? So, is that a major reason? I don't know. But even if it is, that's not an excuse for this type of violence or for any type of violence. So don't get the impression that I'm trying to excuse this, right? I'm not. I'm just saying that this does help create a division, a sort of a us versus them mentality. Hey, you're trying to shut down my culture. I don't appreciate that much. Well, when you do that, you allow other people to come in and say, they're at war with your culture. That's why they won't let you do that. They're at war. They hate you. They hate you. Oh, well, you should hang out with us. We're actual Muslims. We're just like you. And we know that the West hates us. You see where this goes? This goes down a very, very dark path. Very dark path. That, of course, can lead people down the path of radicalization. Some people, certain people who are, of course, alienated, who are more susceptible to this kind of radicalization, the us versus them thing. See, here's the thing, right? According to Bilal Benyich, who's a senior fellow at a think tank called the Itinerant Institute, told the Washington Post's Stephen Mufson last year, quote, "It doesn't surprise me because radical and political Islam in Belgium is something that grew up through the years." See, it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes sometimes decades for that kind of division to really kind of fester, along with high unemployment and, the general, hey, we're going to not accept your culture, even if innocuous things like headscarves. Well, it kind of makes you think that maybe you're under attack a little bit. Now, once again, that doesn't excuse actually attacking someone. Not at all. But I'm just trying to put some contrast in here. A little bit of context. Now, one of the major problems that causes isn't quite that. It's actually the spread of Islamic religious schools. Let me explain. Benyach pointed to the arrival of funding from Saudi Arabia and other wealthy Persian Gulf states in the 1970s that was used to set up conservative religious schools in the area. A decade ago, Belgian journalist Hind Frahi went undercover in Maelbeek and wrote a popular newspaper series that showed disillusioned young Muslims were being influenced by radical preachers. Okay, so we start to see a little bit of a picture of why this started to happen and what eventually led to people from this particular neighborhood carrying out massive attacks against not only France, but Belgium itself. And see, it's important to point this out, not because it's an excuse for this type of violence. No, there is no excuse for this type of violence or for any violence. Or for any of this. You attack innocent people, you're automatically a bad person, and you need to be punished. You need to be stopped. This is just for context. Look, in these areas, it's obvious that you saw a lot of division as well as hopelessness. Well, hopelessness and division helps to breed fundamentalism. Religious and ethnic division helps breed fundamentalism. And then you've got groups like ISIS, you've got Saudi Arabia, which is Salafist and Wahhabists, the most extreme interpretation of Islam. You have clerics from that going up and setting up Islamic schools. Then you've got Western intervention as well. All of these different factors create a toxic soup within these areas that, of course, will cause something nasty to boil out of it. And that's exactly what seems to be happening today. Groups like ISIS, man, the commanders, the leaders of ISIS, are former Baathists from Saddam Hussein. These people know how to use religion to manipulate other people into doing suicide attacks. Desperate people. People who feel alienated, or people who are just plain old crazy. They have a way of being able to recruit those people, especially against the West, which is seen by many in the Muslim community as a destabilizing force. Hey, you keep rolling in here without doing anything, for no reason. We didn't do anything. You roll up into Iraq, take it over, and then leave. You leave it worse than you found it. Well, we shouldn't have been in there in the first place. And that was one of the major problems. To say that us doing unprovoked invasions of Middle Eastern countries hasn't made them a little bit resentful towards us is kind of ridiculous. Of course it's had an impact. It's not the entirety of the picture, but it certainly has had an impact. And it's led to very successful recruiting members for Al-Qaeda and now for ISIS. And they prey on these people who are so desperate, and then they brainwash them and they get them to blow themselves up, man. It's just, this is a big problem that's going to take more than just one solution or two solutions or a couple of days or a bombing campaign to solve. This is a huge issue. This is a huge problem, and it needs to be attacked on multiple fronts. And I'm not talking about just military action here. There's got to be other ways to combat terrorism. You've got to fight the idea. You've got to fight fundamentalism. You've got to stop fundamentalist religion of all stripes. Now, in this case, we're specifically talking about Islam. But there are other fundamentalist religions that can also be very, very dangerous if put in the same position as Islam at this point. And we've got to stand against that. We've got to stand against ignorance. We've got to stand against fundamentalist religion, or we're going to be locked into a cycle of perpetual warfare, and it will never stop. We've got to do something. We've got to do it, and we've got to do it now.